Join ForumIAS Academy, trusted by hundreds of toppers, including IAS Rank 1 Shruti Sharma.
Hello and welcome to ForumIAS. Today is 7th August 2023 and these are all the articles that we are going to see today. Their relevance for prelims and mains examination are given here. Now let us see the first article. This article is about Amrit Bharat Stations scheme. So the Prime Minister had inaugurated on Sunday the revamp of 508 Amrit Bharat stations. So what is this scheme? We will understand that. So the PM had laid the foundation stone for redevelopment of 508 railway stations across the country at a cost of over 24,470 crores. So this particular scheme, that is the Amrit Bharat Station scheme, in this scheme there will be 1300 prime railway stations which would be redeveloped. So what is the aim of redeveloping? The aim is to develop these railway stations as city centers. That is, there is a railway station and there is city on both the sides. So this railway station would be the city center and it would integrate both the sides of the city. So what approach is being followed here is the overall urban development of a city, which is centered on a railway station. So because the city center railway station is integrating both the sides, there will be balanced development. Both the sides would be developed. So that is why they are saying this to be an overall urban development model. So these stations, they will have better seating on platforms, upgraded waiting rooms, free Wi-Fi. There will be facilities provided in these railway stations. Okay, so there will be well-designed traffic circulation not only for passengers, overall for the railway system also there will be some facilities developed and there will be provision for intermodal integration. Intermodal, that is, say for example, if goods are arriving in this railway station, they are arriving through rail, then they can be easily transferred to another roadways type of transportation, that is intermodal integration. How easily one mode of transport is integrated with another mode of transport. Why this is done? This is done to ensure last mile connectivity. Even that would be taken care in this Amrit Bharat station scheme. Okay, so and moreover these railway stations, their redesign will be inspired by the local culture, heritage, architecture. Say for example, there is Jammu Tawi station. Jammu Tawi station, it is in Jammu near Katra. So this station, it will be developed on the basis of the significance of Raghunath Mandir. So this station would be developed on the basis of Raghunath Mandir. This is what they mean when they say that a station building will be inspired by local culture, heritage, architecture. Okay, that is it about Amrit Bharat station scheme. In the upcoming examinations, this scheme is very important. For those of you writing mains, you can use this in infrastructure development part of your GS3. Okay. Moving on to the next article, this piece of editorial is a very fine editorial because it goes into very nuanced topic that is not widely discussed in news. That is about the Jan Vishwas Act. What is the problem with this act? This act has been recently passed. What is the problem that is being discussed here is the separation of powers. We all would have studied in polity about separation of powers. That is, there is executive, there is judiciary, and there is legislature. So these are all the three arms of government. Now there will be separation of powers between these three elements. That means judiciary can't encroach on the power of legislature. Executive can't encroach on the power of judiciary. In turn, judiciary can also not encroach on the power of executive. Legislature can also not encroach on the power of judiciary. So they will work independently. That is called a separation of powers. Right? So this particular article is about separation of powers. Now that we have understood the basic concept of separation of power, let us go into deep discussion about this article. So the Vishwas Act has been enacted. What is the purpose of this act? The government says that this Vishwas Act has come about in order to promote ease of doing business. Ease of doing business. How do they promote ease of doing business? They are promoting ease of doing business by replacing criminal imprisonment with penalties. Wherever there is criminal imprisonment, it has been amended to replace it with penalty. Okay, let us see what does it mean in the upcoming discussion. So the basic concept behind this Vishwas Act is to replace criminal imprisonment with penalties. So the power to impose these monetary penalties, it lies in the hands of the bureaucracy. Earlier, when there was a provision of criminal imprisonment in a particular law, what will happen? A case will go on in the court and the court will impose a punishment if the court finds the accused person to be guilty. Now, if there is a penalty, what happens is, in this particular act, it's not likely that judiciary cannot impose a penalty. That can also be a legitimate provision. But in this particular amendment, the government has amended this act to make it that the bureaucracy, they would be imposing the penalties rather than the judiciary. Let us take the example of the Environment Protection Act. The Vishwas Act amends the Environmental Protection Act, Air Pollution Act. In these acts, the imprisonment punishment has been replaced with penalties up to 15 lakh, and this penalty would be imposed by designated bureaucrats who are in the rank of joint secretaries. So this is what we meant when we said that this act has replaced criminal imprisonment with penalties. But the problem is, the power of imposition of these penalties is not resting in the hands of judiciary, rather it is resting in the hands of the bureaucracy. What would this lead to? How is this harmful? It would lead to tax terrorism. This tax terrorism term has been widely in news for the past 3 years. What does it mean? Imposition of unnecessary taxes. If there is more power with the bureaucracy to impose fines, penalties, anytime the bureaucrat can go to a premises, inspect that premises, cite some provision, and they can impose those penalties. So this actually hinders the ease of doing business, because the bureaucracy has been empowered to impose penalty at any time, and there is no reasonable time frame that is behind this imposition of penalty. They can go anytime arbitrarily. So this goes against the concept of rule of law also. Instead, if this power of imposition of penalty is in the hands of judiciary, the case will go on. The party who is accused, they will have the opportunity to present the case. The merits of the case would be considered. Then the judiciary will apply the law to that particular fact, and the judiciary will determine, the judge will determine whether or not this party is guilty, and then the judge would impose the penalty, which will then be enforced by the bureaucracy. If the judge has for example, the judge has imposed 400 crore penalty, it is in the hands of the district magistrate or whosoever bureaucrat is designated by that law to ensure that that particular fine amount is collected. So, if there is an industry which is violating a particular provision, the party to the case are who? One party to the case is the industry, the another party is the government. The government is the prosecutor in this case. So that is why the author of this article is saying the bureaucracy cannot be the prosecutor and judge while imposing penalties and ordering the payment of compensation. So, for example, there is an XYZ Limited, they have violated and there will be a case in the judiciary, right? And the other party is the government, and the government is represented by bureaucrats. So what happens if there is no judiciary? If the role of judiciary is not there, only the government is going to impose penalty. What happens? The government, they are themselves the prosecutor as well as the judge. So the government has undue power vis-a-vis a industry. So this can be used to harass industrialists, right? And this scheme also goes against the constitutional scheme of separation of powers, because in Article 50 in the Directive Principles of State Policy, DPSP, this DPSP directs the state to achieve separation of powers. So, if the power to impose penalty is coming under the ambit of bureaucracy, it goes against the principle of separation of powers. So, this kind of bureaucracy capturing the judicial power has been going on for quite some time. There are three primary ways in which bureaucracy is capturing the judicial power. So, the first way is tribunals. There are many tribunals in India. There is Income Tax Tribunal, there is Central Administrative Tribunal, right? In all these tribunals, there will be judicial members and technical members. Okay, so what happens is judicial members came from the law background, but these technical members, they are often bureaucrats. So again, they are encroaching upon the domain of judiciary. Then there are regulatory bodies like Competition Commission of India, that is the CCI, SEBI. Most often, these regulatory bodies are headed by bureaucrats. Again, what do these regulatory bodies do? Let us take for example SEBI, which is the share market regulator. SEBI will see if there is any irregularity in the share market, and it will impose a fine on the erring party. If some company is manipulating the share market, SEBI will impose fine on them. And this SEBI would be staffed mostly by bureaucrats rather than judicial members. So this is also another way wherein bureaucracy is encroaching upon the power of the judiciary. The third way is the role of adjudicatory officers. So there are a lot of acts in which there are adjudicatory officers. We have acts like Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, Information Technology Act 2001, Food Safety and Standards Act 2006. These are some examples in which there is an adjudicatory officer. What do these adjudicatory officers do? they are the bureaucrats. They will confirm attachment orders for properties or impose penalties on businesses. Let us take the example of Food Safety and Standards Act. In this particular act, if there is a restaurant which is following some unhygienic practices, here also the authorities, the adjudicating officers here, there will be an inspecting officer. This inspecting officer will the food safety inspector, they will go to this restaurant, okay, and they will find that there is some kind of unhygienic practice that is going on, and they will impose a fine. And this fine, right, it is confirmed by the adjudicatory officer. Again, what happens? The bureaucracy, they are only the prosecutor in the form of inspector. They are only the judge in the form of adjudicatory officers. So, what happens? The bureaucracy is one of the parties to the case, and they are also judging the case. This is against rule of law, right? So that is what the author of this article is saying, that by being a technical member in tribunal, by forming of regulatory bodies and being an adjudicatory officer, these are all the three ways through which bureaucracy is encroaching upon the powers of judiciary. Okay, now there is a question whether imposing a fine is a judicial function or it is an administrative function. Okay, so when you are violating the traffic, there is a traffic inspector, he imposes a fine on you. Whether imposing a fine, what the traffic inspector is doing, he is doing an administrative function, right? He is an administrator, he is a bureaucrat. So we have to discuss whether imposing fine or penalty is a judicial function. Why we have to discuss whether it is a judicial function or not? Because the Supreme Court is very clear that a judicial function can be discharged only by an independent judicial authority. Judicial function cannot be discharged by any authority which is not a judicial authority. That is the corollary to this statement. Okay, let us apply this particular principle of judicial function to the Vishwas Act. Whether the penalties are civil penalties or criminal penalties, there is no judicial precedent. That is, there is no case law in which the Supreme Court has explicitly said that collecting a penalty or imposing a penalty, whether it is civil or criminal, is a judicial function or administrative function. There are no precedents, there are no case laws in this regard. So how do we determine whether imposing a penalty is a judicial function or not? Any inquiry conducting fact finding followed by application of the law to the facts and determination of punishment or compensation is in essence a judicial function. See, in this Vishwas Act, it amends various laws including Environment Protection Act. Say, let us go to the example that we had before. XYZ Limited is violating some environmental norms. The government officer goes to the premises. They will see what kind of violation has happened, to what extent violation has happened, and then they will apply the law, that is the Environment Protection Act, to these facts that they found out from inspecting the premises of XYZ Limited. And then they will see whether there is a violation of law or not. If there is a violation, there will be a penalty that will be imposed. So, this seems like a judicial function, right? There is a fact finding, then there is application of law to the facts and determination of punishment. That is what is happening. So, this kind of imposition of penalty under the Vishwas Act seems to be a judicial function, right? Instead, what should be the case? Ideally, what should happen? Government should prove its case before an independent judge so that there is a fair trial before imposition of any punishment. Otherwise, what will happen? The bureaucrat will go, they will unilaterally fine an industry. without providing that particular industry, the XYZ Limited, to present their case. Instead, if it is a judicial process, government will prove its case and the XYZ Limited will defend themselves. So, there will be analysis of facts rather than unilateral imposition of penalty by the bureaucracy. So, that is why the author is saying the government cannot be a prosecutor and judge in its own case. That is the essence of rule of law. There should be no arbitrary punishment. Right? We have studied this in polity. In Lakshmikant book itself it is given. What is rule of law? This case wherein the government itself is a prosecutor and judge, it is a violation of rule of law. This sentence you can verbatim quote in your mains answer. Okay? So that is what is discussed. What provisions have been newly brought in the Jan Vishwas Act and what are the implications of those provisions, that has been discussed. Now we will move on to the third article. The third article is about India's sugar surplus leading to a crisis. This is about sugarcane cultivation. Is India producing more sugarcane? Yes, India is producing lot of sugarcane, because both the central government and the state government, they both incentivize sugarcane production. Alright. Because of that, there is a crisis happening. What crisis? Water crisis. And what are the implications of this crisis? That we are going to discuss in this article. Why this article has come in news? Because India became the world's top sugar producer in 2021-22, surpassing Brazil with a record of 359 lakh tons. So, India is the number one sugar producer in the world. First of all, we have to understand why there is excess sugar production in India. We have domestic demand, right? There is large domestic demand. That is why India is the world's largest consumer of sugar. So, India has to produce enough to meet its huge domestic demand. And moreover, the central government offers something called as a fair and remunerative price. MSP is there for minimum support price is there for rice, wheat, cereals, etc. Right? FRP, that is fair and remunerative price, is for sugarcane. In MSP, what happens? The government procures from the farmer and the government pays the farmer. But in case of FRP in sugarcane, what happens is the sugar mills have to pay the sugarcane farmers. What happens? The sugarcane farmers sell their sugarcane produce to the sugar mills. Then the sugar mill will process the sugarcane and extract sugar from it. So, the farmers would get a fair price. That is being ensured by the central government, and the central government announces the fair and remunerative price, FRP. Say for example, this price is 1200 rupees per ton. What does this mean? A particular sugar mill cannot purchase sugarcane from a farmer below this price. They can even offer above this price. Minimum they have to offer this price. And moreover, many state governments also offer heavy subsidies. This is the FRP that is announced by the central government. There are several state governments which hike this price. Okay. So, for example, Tamil Nadu is a state which produces sugarcane. It is a sugarcane state. Tamil Nadu government may announce that it should be 1500 per ton. So, what does it mean in Tamil Nadu? The mill cannot procure sugarcane from a sugarcane farmer below this 1500 rupees. Okay, so this kind of incentivization is provided by both the central government and the state government. Because of this, the farmer can grow sugarcane without any concern for whether I will be able to sell this sugarcane or not. There is an assured price. This is incentivization. Against this, many countries filed case in the WTO, that is the World Trade Organization. Brazil, Australia, Guatemala, they filed a complaint in World Trade Organization saying that India is providing excessive export subsidies. There is excessive domestic support to farmers. That is why Indian farmers are able to outcompete other countries in the global market. And India lost this case. India also lost its appeal in WTO. So, in this context, what has been done? There is excessive sugarcane production. How do we utilize that? Some portion of it goes towards manufacturing of sugar to meet the domestic demand. But we can't export beyond a certain limit. We have already lost the case in WTO. So, this excessive sugarcane, where is it being consumed? It is being diverted to the production of ethanol. Ethanol is alcohol. It is produced by fermenting sugarcane molasses or sugar. And government introduced EBP program, that is ethanol blending program. Ethanol blending program. And this program was introduced in 2003 to reduce crude oil imports and curtail greenhouse gas emissions from petrol-based vehicles. So what happens in EBP, that is the ethanol blending program, is in petrol, some portion of ethanol is blended. Because of this, we need not import as much crude oil. So if there is 100 liter, in that 5 liter of ethanol will go. So this 5 liter of import is now saved because ethanol is being used. Not only saving of import of crude oil, if we are blending ethanol with petrol, it will reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So we are utilizing the excessive sugarcane in producing ethanol, which is then used in ethanol blending program to blend with petrol, so that there is a reduction in crude oil imports and curtailment of greenhouse gas emissions. And this is a very successful initiative. When we started out in 2003, the goal was to achieve blending rate of 5%. Now the target is 20% for 2025. Already India has achieved 10% ethanol blending. So this way the excessive production is being absorbed through the ethanol blending program. But this does not negate the factor that excessive sugarcane cultivation is impacting groundwater. Right? We know that this EBP program reduced crude oil imports, it has reduced sugar exports, it has reduced greenhouse gas emissions, but the fact remains that sugarcane cultivation is a water intensive cultivation. First of all, sugarcane requires 3000 millimeter of rainfall. But the growing states, we have Maharashtra, which is a top sugarcane growing state. We have UP, we have Tamil Nadu, right? These states, they on average get 1000 to 1200 millimeter. So the rest of it, they rely completely on groundwater. But groundwater is a limited resource. The Central Groundwater Board, CGWB, according to their report, in order to produce 100 kilograms of sugar, we need 2 lakh liters of groundwater for irrigation. See how much groundwater is exploited to produce this sugarcane, right? So this is a very alarming problem. That is why excessive production of sugarcane is a concern. Now, what are the solutions to this problem? So there should be a comprehensive subsidy scheme for a variety of crops. Because FRP is a very high amount, that is why the farmers are going for sugarcane, because they can get better returns on their investment. If we are to revise our subsidy scheme for a variety of crops, it will enable the farmers to diversify. Okay, that is the first measure. Then there should be availability of wider range of profitable and less resource intensive crops. Say for example millets. Millets consume very less water, but they are not profitable. So if we can make these millets to be profitable crops by supporting them, then farmers will also be incentivized to cultivate millets. Then only they'll leave sugarcane and cultivate other crops. Then in the present sugarcane cultivation itself, we can become environmentally responsible. How? We can introduce practices such as drip irrigation, right? So because of this, nearly there is 70% water saving. So this kind of responsible practices can be introduced, and there can be practices like rainwater harvesting, wastewater treatment, canal irrigation. All these measures will reduce the pressure on the groundwater. If water is available from all these resources, groundwater extraction also will reduce. So this way forward, it has two long-term solutions and two short-term solutions. So this article is a very comprehensive article, and there are chances for this article, this question, to appear in mains itself. Okay, so save this article and keep. Next article is about FATF trying to revise recommendations to safeguard NPOs. What are NPOs? NPOs are non-profit organizations. Generally, what happens is these NPOs are NGOs. What happens? Sometimes these organizations are used for money laundering. And this laundered money, it is then used for terror financing. This should not happen. That is why this body, FATF, Financial Action Task Force, they have regulations against these NPOs so that they don't become a channel for money laundering and terror financing. But what is happening is sometimes it hurts the legitimate activities of non-profit organizations. So in order to balance regulation and enabling these organizations to do meaningful work, FATF is trying to revise the regulations, recommendations to safeguard these NPOs. So that is the crux of this article. From exam perspective, we have to know what is FATF. The FATF, that is the Financial Action Task Force, is the global money laundering and terror financing watchdog, and they will set the international standards that aim to prevent these illegal activities, that is money laundering and terror financing. There are 39 members in this FATF, and India is also a member. If a country is not following these standards, if they are repeatedly failing to implement these standards, they can be named as jurisdiction under increased monitoring or a high risk jurisdiction. You would have heard of these names: grey list, blacklist. These are the formal names. Jurisdiction under increased monitoring means it is in grey list. High risk jurisdiction means it is in blacklist. You might have heard of Pakistan coming in and out of the grey list, right? And that grey list is this FATF grey list. Okay, let us move to the next article. The next article is about cheetah conservation. As we all know, and it has been very well discussed in our news analysis program about the cheetah deaths in Madhya Pradesh. The translocated cheetahs from Africa, 20 were translocated to India, and so far 6 of them have unfortunately died. What can be done in this regard? This article says that there is a tiger conservation strategy that is adopted by the state of Madhya Pradesh, which can be applied for cheetahs also. It will be useful in cheetah conservation as well. What is that strategy? We'll see. Balancing the population of predators and prey was the key factor enabling 50% surge in Madhya Pradesh's tiger population. In the 2022 tiger census, Madhya Pradesh clinched the first place. Okay, Madhya Pradesh state, they are number 1 in tiger population. And this was achieved by Madhya Pradesh because compared to last census, there has been nearly 50% surge in number of tigers. How did they achieve this? They balanced the population of predators, which are the tigers, and prey. We have deers, we have Barasinga, that is the swamp deer, Cheetah, which is the spotted deer. By balancing the prey and predator population, Madhya Pradesh was able to increase their tiger population by 50%. So, they are actively moving tigers and their prey within the state to balance the predator-prey population. For example, if there is a region in which there is a large number of cheetah, they will be moved to a region where there are less number of cheetah, less number of prey. And in that less number of prey region, once the cheetah is removed and it is placed in this, so let us say there is this A national park, okay. It has large number of cheetah. It has very large number. And there is a B national park in which cheetah population is less. Some of these cheetah, they are transferred to B national park, okay, and they started growing in this B national park. Obviously they will reproduce, right? Then it will reach a critical number. It will reach the optimum number, it will reach that. Then what happens? If there is more prey population, the tiger population, that is the predator population, will also increase because they have enough prey. So what happens? Along with the increase in the prey population, tiger population will also increase. So here what happens? Tiger population has now increased. Then these tigers will be transported to A region where the number of tigers are relatively less. Like this, the forest department will actively relocate. This is just 2 national parks. There can be number of areas, C, D, E, number of tiger reserves. The MP Forest Department, they will actively relocate the tiger among various national parks to balance the predator and prey population. They are mixing, okay. So, actually this happens naturally. The nature has ways of balancing predator-prey population, but it is a very slow process. And today forests are facing stress from deforestation, encroachment, etc. That is why the MP Forest Department, they have been actively intervening. Similar strategy can be applied for cheetah also, so that the cheetah translocation program could potentially be a success. That is all about this article. We have already discussed much about cheetah conservation, tiger conservation. So we are just seeing the new update. Okay. Now we will discuss some PYQ. Economically, one of the results of British rule in India on the 19th century was A. Increase in the export of handicrafts. No. British rule, it destroyed the handicrafts industry. Growth in the number of Indian-owned factories. No. There was de-industrialization during British period. Commercialization of Indian agriculture. This is correct. Why? Because after the British came, there was patta system which was introduced. So the now land became saleable, leasable, rentable. This is a marker of commercialization, right? So commercialization of Indian agriculture is the result. Rapid increase in urban population, no. Many urban centers like Murshidabad and all, they were de-urbanized because these Indian handicrafts were destroyed, and those people who were engaged in that, they went back to villages. So the correct answer in this is C. Next question. In which of the following areas can GPS technology, the global positioning system, which is used commonly in Google Maps, where and all this can be used? Mobile phone operations, yes, obviously. Banking, to geotag assets if bank is giving some loan to construct an asset, then the asset can be geotagged so that the bank will ensure the loan money is spent for that purpose only. Controlling power grids, again geotagging. So correct answer is all the above, D 1, 2 and 3. That's it for today's discussion. Follow us on all the social media platforms. This is Indumati signing off. Thank you and all the best.